I'm often asked what it's like to date an Italian, and my response is usually it depends. It depends on many factors. It depends on where in Italy you are, because by now you all know that Italy is really many countries rolled into one, but it also depends on your own personal circumstances and tastes. However, that said, I do think there are four very general, very broad stages that every person will experience at least once anyway, when it comes to dating an Italian. Now, this video is based on my own personal experiences having dated an Italian man, but of course, I believe that these stages are equally relevant whether you are now or whether you are dating someone of the same sexuality. I don't really think that really changes too much. There might be some slight moderations, but essentially I believe these stages will still apply to you. So if you're curious to know more, then make sure you stick around. And also, if you enjoy learning about the reality of everyday life here in South Italy, you are in the right place. Make sure you hit subscribe so that you don't miss any of my future content. And let's get into the infamous stage one of dating in Italy. Stage one, once upon a time. In a survey conducted by the swimwear brand Pour Moi last summer, out of 50 nationalities in the world, Italians came 8th as one of the most attractive nationalities. Now, this plays really nicely into the kind of fairy tale image that we have kind of construed in our minds of what Italian men especially look like. And this is fueled by the famous actors that we see, celebrities, models that really kind of feed into that image that we have in our minds. Now, I will say that there is truth to this. I do think Italians, both male and female, are an incredibly attractive nationality. However, as I think we probably all know by now in life, looks play only a very small part in what makes a person. There is so much more to a person than just how they look appearance-wise. You've got mindset to consider. You've got kind of the way that they view their life and their characteristics and their personality and where they intend to go in life and the things that they intend to do, their ambition, their drive. There are so many things that make up a person other than just their physical appearance. But I do think that this is a stage where we can find ourselves becoming infatuated with Italian people because of this. We get lost in their looks. We get lost in the belief that they are like some superior nationality in terms of romantic connections. However, you quickly find yourself arriving at stage two when you spend a decent amount of time living here in Italy. Stage two, expectation versus reality. So you have it in your mind that an Italian person is going to be really attractive, really romantic even, like just the perfect partner to have. And then reality shakes you up a little bit. There are loads of different factors that you have to consider when you're dating someone here in Italy, and appearance, unfortunately, is a very, very small factor that you have to think about. The first, I would say, is tradition. Now, I live in Sicily, as far south as you can get in Italy. So you can imagine there's this mentality in Italy that the further south you go, the more closed the minds of the people are. And I do think there's a lot of prejudice against the south of Italy, which is why I love to do my best to kind of promote the reality of life here, beauty and the ugly truth, because I do think that the south of Italy gets an extremely bad rap, which isn't always justified. However, I do think that this part is true. Predominantly, there are a lot of closed minds here in Sicily, like so many, and I notice it a lot in like gatherings of people. Like when there's an event, a family event, you'll find the men sitting down, they're talking, they're relaxing, they're having a beer, and it's always the women who are cooking or cleaning or tidying up. It's like this traditional division of roles in the house that a lot of people still adhere to here in the south of Italy. And I think this is definitely something to consider, because when you're dating someone, you've got to understand what your expectations are going to be in that relationship. Like, are you expected to cook and clean and manage the house while your partner does nothing? Like, there are people here with forward-thinking minds, thankfully. Not everybody here is the same, but there is a large percentage of people here who maintain this traditional outlook in terms of a relationship. And I do think that this can make connections here in Italy very complicated indeed, because If you have a strong mind and you're very forward thinking and you believe in equality of roles and in the work that you do in the home, this can cause a lot of problems if your partner has a completely different mindset and upbringing. So tradition is definitely something that you need to consider, because not everybody takes on all the responsibilities of the home. Of course, there are Italian men who will take on the roles that are traditionally perceived for women in the house, but it can't be said for everyone. And so I think this is a really important thing to consider when you're assessing the relationship that you're in, is that whole expectation versus reality in terms of tradition. Then you have flirtatiousness to consider. Italian men especially are incredibly flirtatious. They have what I call the wandering eye. They are constantly distracted by the opposite sex, even if they have their partner or their wife next to them. And you know, they're ready to give the excuses. Oh, I'm just looking around the room. Oh, she's got a nice bag, whatever it may be. But essentially they love women and they love looking at the opposite sex, if that is their sexuality. And so essentially you have to consider this, because you have this notion that you're going to be with somebody who's incredibly romantic, but then you have to accept that they're more than likely also going to be checking out everybody else around you as well. And that can be quite uncomfortable to be in sometimes if you're not used to that in your culture, where, you know, perhaps in your culture, men don't kind of perv over women in the same way. I mean, I notice this a lot, like in my comments on this channel. Some of you have said you've come to Sicily in the past and have felt like you've been a walking piece of meat. And I do think that in my experiences, when I walk around and I see the heads do the whole follow me along the road, that it's true. And it's very much like females are objectified here, and like only based on their personal appearance and how they look, rather than on who they are as a person. And so I think this is definitely something to consider. The whole flirtatious attitude that a lot of Italian men have can be difficult if you're in a relationship. So again, that whole expectation versus reality thing that you have to really, really consider. And then on a more serious note, we've got the message of domestic violence, because this does exist here in Italy. And I think for a long while, it was something that was covered up. It was kept inside the home. It wasn't really talked about enough. But thanks to recent initiatives that have really tried to highlight the growing number of domestic violence cases and even deaths that are caused as a result of domestic violence, there are more people talking about this now. And in most major towns and cities, you will see benches that have been painted red to commemorate those victims of domestic violence. And so there is more of a culture now of speaking up about this, but you do see cases reported of domestic violence pretty much every week, even here in Sicily and even across the country as a whole. And so again, you've got this mindset that you think you're going to be dating a perfect person, but in reality, you can still find shit people here. You can still find people that don't have respect for their partners, who will mentally and physically abuse you. Like, you can still find that here. Italians are not like some godlike race. Like, they are as imperfect as many other people in many other countries. And I think that's a really, really important thing to remember. So if you're really considering this whole expectation versus reality, I think by the end of this stage, you are comfortably aware that, you know, maybe that fairy tale image has now been shattered. But it doesn't stop there, because depending on your family dynamics and depending on who you're with, there is one other woman that you need to be very aware of, and that woman you encounter in stage 3. Stage 3, the other woman. Yes, that's right. I'm referring to mummy, because essentially there is this like saying, this stereotype that Italian men are mummy's boys, and it can be true. And I think it also depends on the dynamics of the family. I think it also depends on whether or not you are dating the youngest son in the family, affectionately known as the picciarido in Sicilian, because essentially that dynamic is claustrophobic. Like, that dynamic means that that son, at whatever age they're going to be, are always going to be considered the baby, which can cause many problems. But essentially, it's really important that you get on with the mother of your partner, because they play such a predominant role in the majority of Italian people's lives. Of course, there are exceptions. Not every family here is perfect. Not every family gets on with their mother. Not every family has a relationship. But essentially, there is a very strong link between Italian mothers and their children. and especially their sons as well. And they can be very protective, and also depending on the mother themselves, they can really become a little domineering and believe that they have the right answer to a situation, or they know what to do, or they want to help or interfere, depending on which way you look at it in particular situations. So yes, the other woman is a very, very important stage that you'll arrive at, navigating that relationship with the mother of your partner, because essentially it's an important relationship and it is one that has to be respected. But it's also one that can be difficult sometimes if you're in a romantic relationship with someone who is still treated like they're a baby. So essentially you have to really consider this aspect to be very delicate around it, because Italians will always put blood above water. Blood is always thicker than water. It doesn't matter if they've not spoken in 20 years. It doesn't matter if they've had an argument the day before. Family will always come first. Blood is always thicker than water. So this is a stage that you have to be very delicate around, because if you put a foot wrong, it would be you that's out the door and not necessarily the relationship with the mother. So you do have to be careful. I would say it's not the same for everyone, but this is a very, very delicate stage. And I think once you've navigated these 3 stages, the once upon a time, the expectation versus reality, and the other woman, you definitely have arrived fully fledged into stage 4. Stage 4, the cold shower. That's it. You now realize that Italian men are just the same as any other man around the world. There may be some added bonuses in terms of how they look, or in terms of their style, or even in terms of their mindset towards family and like the respect and love that they show. But essentially, bottom line, they are the same as any other men around the world. And so sometimes that is literally like taking a freezing cold shower, because it shattered all the illusions that you had, all the beliefs that you'd built up, and all the fairy tale stories that you'd told yourself. This is the reality though. A lot of people paint Italy with this romantic paintbrush, and in a way it really gets on my nerves, because people don't understand what life is like here, and people don't understand that life isn't perfect here, and that we have problems, and that people aren't perfect. Nobody is an angel here. So I think this is a really important stage to arrive at, because when you have this cold shower, it's like a level of acceptance, which I've spoken about in all of the videos that I've done in this series, where you realize that people here aren't perfect. So you need to do your due diligence, you need to get to know people, and you need to accept the fact that this fairy tale illusion that you've created for yourself doesn't really exist. And you will find some amazing people here, but you will also find people who do not deserve your time, the same as anywhere else in the world. And it's down to you to really get to know people and understand who is the person that is worthy of you and your time. So I think this is a really important stage to arrive at. And essentially, when you do, I think you feel more integrated here in Italy. You start to really see things for what they are, and you've lost that whole kind of shine that we put on things when we don't really understand a situation very well. So I hope this video has helped you to understand a bit more what it's really like to date an Italian, because it isn't all that is cracked up to be sometimes. I will see you in the next video.